Ahead tonight, was there more to yesterday's visa application suspension than meets the eye? Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell answers skeptics.
Plans for a meeting of the minds over crime. We'll tell you what the Prime Minister has said.
And a salary review could be coming. Ahead, which salaries the minister singled out. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Candino Knowles. As always, it's good to have you with us.
Topping the news tonight, the frequency of crime amped up by the recent robbery of a U.S. Embassy official and attacks on tourists has prompted a response from the Prime Minister, Perry Christie. Although Mr. Christie declined an on-camera interview when approached outside Cabinet today, he did say that he had several, quote, serious meetings planned with the Minister of National Security and other agencies on the matter.
Now, crime has been the source of public outrage amidst frequent murders, which total more than 50 for the year. Fears over the country's image as a safe destination were elevated when a tourist was murdered, a U.S. staffer robbed, and most recently, 2 tourists held up. The government has responded to the crime problem with programs like urban renewal, and they say crime is down in key areas. Well, processing of visa applications for Bahamians resumed at the United States Embassy this morning. This after non-immigrant visa services were suspended yesterday following the assault and robbery of the American Embassy's Vice Consul Kathleen Kayer Sunday morning. Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell thanked U.S. Charge d'Affaires John Dinkelman in the House of Assembly this morning for his quick action in resolving the matter. He also explained to members in detail why the initial decision was made by embassy officials.
Conspiracy theorists abound about what this or that action means. I wish only to deal with the facts as we know them. The explanation from the U.S. is simple. The Vice Consul was one of a specialized group of rare experts in her field, and the U.S. government indicated that they were challenged in her absence to find the level of expertise which is reposed in her. Thus, the brief surcease yesterday. Happily, that is behind us. In light of the statements in the social media and the position taken by the official opposition on this matter, I wish to say that it is always prudent to base one's commentary on the facts and not on speculation which is not based in reason or logic. It is the government's view that matters ought to be put in their proper context. A serious event transpired. We should not make it worse by exaggerated claims.
Now, Minister Mitchell said it is sad when party politics come into play following these types of incidents.
For example, the opposition described what happened yesterday at the embassy as unprecedented and called for us to account for our stewardship. That is, as it should be, the calling into account, although it is regrettable that a political division takes place over this unfortunate incident. I remind them, however, that during one of their terms, a minister of the government was murdered. That too was unprecedented, but we got through it by logical and rational responses to a difficult problem. The perpetrators were brought to justice. With this then, I urge all Bahamians to rededicate ourselves to ridding the country of crime. I am certain the professionals, as we speak, are taking the measures seeking to contain this very ugly incident which we deeply regret and deplore, and trying to ensure that it does not happen again.
Labor Minister Shane Gibson says the public service salary structure needs to be reviewed. He was talking with reporters outside Cabinet today when he said of salaries at BEC, Water and Sewage, NIB, and possibly the Broadcasting Corporation, for example, some salary structures are, in his words, not relevant in these economically challenging times. In this report, Janaea Noel Ferguson tells us which employees he singled out.
As the National Insurance Board considers a new leader, Minister of Labor Shane Gibson said that while there may not be much that can be done about the present salary structure, it must be reviewed for future accountability.
Persons went into National Insurance trying to treat it as a private entity, making hundreds of millions of dollars, paying out bonuses and high salaries and compensation packages, and they're getting meal allowance, vehicle. The only thing they didn't get was school allowance and housing allowance. And I believe if we had left them there long enough, they probably would have gotten that as well.
While we await the appointment of a new NIB director, Minister of Labor Shane Gibson said the whole structure in regards to salaries will be reviewed, he says, not only at NIB, but other government corporations.
When you look at the salary structure at most of the government corporations, particularly due to the fact that most of them are not making monies the way they did in the past, it is difficult to justify those high salaries.
Minister Gibson said looking at other agencies such as the Bahamas Electrical Corporation, Water and Sewage, NIB, and possibly the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, some salary structures are, in his words, not relevant to these economically challenging times.
All of the executives would make, if not $100,000 a year. It wouldn't be far from that. I would venture to say that their executives, perhaps the minimum amount they make is maybe around $90,000, $95,000 a year. I would be surprised if any is that low. Most of them are over $100,000. Cabinet ministers only make $66,000 a year.
Moving forward, Minister Gibson says he already has a manpower audit being conducted throughout the public service. He hopes that this will be extended to other government corporations for new salary structures to be implemented.
Individual boards were able to increase compensation and salaries for executives of these various corporations, which really sort of put them out of whack. And I think what they did is they compared them with each other for a while, and then they started comparing them with the private sector. And when they looked at the private sector to compare them to, they compared them to entities who are making millions of dollars. These corporations are not making millions of dollars. I mean, we are trying to see how we could keep the cost of living down. The only way we can do that is to keep the cost of running these corporations at a bare minimum. But of course,
it will affect salaries of everyone then.
Well, it will. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. I'm not sure whether it's going to be through recommending salary freezes, restructuring, because it's difficult to unilaterally change the person's terms and conditions of employment.
Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Well, weeks after former director of the National Insurance Board, Algernon Cargo, was fired from the top post, a decision hasn't been made yet on a replacement. Minister of Labor, the Honorable Shane Gibson, says consideration is still being given to a few prospects, though it was widely speculated that Mrs. Rowena Bethel would be appointed as the new director.
They interviewed 4 persons, Mr. Johnson, Mr. DeVoe, Ms. Bethel, and Mr. Butler. On to my colleagues already, and they've already approved it in order of priority, and we hopefully I should be meeting with those persons in order that we selected them, hopefully sometimes over the next couple of days, and once we would have completed the meetings, then we'll be making the final appointment. We've not selected anybody yet. We've not discussed, we've gotten cabinet's agreement to proceed, but we have not selected anybody yet. We have not negotiated any contracts with anybody yet. And once we have the meeting, so the next couple of days, then we will move on to that stage.
Now, Minister Gibson also responded to President of the Bahamas Communications and Public Officers Union President Bernard Evans, who during a press conference earlier this week expressed his disappointment with the government being unable to regain majority share in BTC. Evans also noted that morale at the company is low. He called on the government to rectify the situation as soon as possible. But Minister Gibson told reporters outside of cabinet that he has a hard time understanding these, quote, new generation of union leaders who look to the government to do everything.
I don't know about this new generation union, right? When I was a union leader, I didn't depend on the government to do my job. For me, I did it myself, right? This new generation of union leaders seem to want the government to do everything. We can certainly give you a support base, but persons must take it upon themselves to fight for what they think is rightfully theirs and to fight for what they believe in. And sometimes, it calls for sacrifice, and you have to make those sacrifices. I remember losing salaries on a number of occasions when I worked at Batelco because I wanted something that was better. These days, it's always blame the government. Well, if the union feel that strong, how come I don't see them demonstrating? Why don't I see them making a move to make some of these things happen? And so I would really ask them to put their money where their mouth is, and let me see some action. And stop just sitting back waiting on the government to initiate everything.
In our first look at weather, pockets of showers being fired over the northwest Bahamas, but outside of our studios, we have partly cloudy skies, your temperature 84 degrees, relative humidity 75%, winds out of the south-southeast at 10 knots, your barometric pressure 1,017.0 millibars, that's 30.03 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned, temperatures around the Family Islands, travel and boating forecasts is still to come.
Nearly 4,000 members of the Bahamas Union of Teachers were due to vote today to either retain the leadership of incumbent Belinda Wilson or select new leadership.
Wilson is being challenged for the presidency by former General Secretary Stephen McPhee. Charisma Robinson visited 2 polling stations today to gauge sentiment.
It was a clash of 2 familiar faces vying for leadership of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, and today BUT members talked about what they're expecting from their next executive team as incumbent President Belinda Wilson and her A-team and former General Secretary Stephen McPhee of Team Restoration Alliance battled it out.
One of the things that I think we as teachers in the Bahamas, which I feel Bahamians should be looking out for, is the proper management of the funds.
I'm hoping that they continue on whatever path, just to make sure that teachers come first.
I'm hoping that we can get the business to continue as it's going right now.
Ms. Wilson arrived here at Workers' House around 12 this afternoon to cast her ballot. She's confident that re-election is secured.
I believe that we've been tried and proven. And there's a saying that losers say what they will do, but winners just do. And we've done for the members, and they know where our heart is, where our passion is.
Meanwhile, McPhee has spent 8 years as a union executive. He believes his experience over the years makes him eligible to become the next teachers union president.
We intend to make the organization a more effective one, and that's by engaging the members, deepening the democracy, and embracing the teamwork, as we say.
Presiding officer at the Workers' House polling station, Kevin Wilkinson, says the process has been running smoothly.
We don't have any problems here, none at all.
Okay, and when will we know exactly who won?
Well, the poll closes at 5, so we'll have to, get all the ballots together, and then we have to sort them because there's 9 different ballots. So we have to sort all those out and put them, we have them color coded and everything, so we have to put them aside and then come. So probably about 11, 12 midnight.
Voting at the Bahamas Communications and Public Officers Union Hall also seemed to be going smoothly. Charisma Robinson, ZNS Network News.
Well, there's been another delay in the Kofi Goodman murder trial. This time, the case has been put off because the foreman is ill and another juror had a death in the family. With that in mind, Justice Bernard Turner, who is presiding over the case, adjourned it to June 18th at 10 a.m. 38-year-old Goodman is accused of killing 11-year-old Marco Archer back in 2011. Goodman maintains his innocence. Attorney Jeffrey Farquharson is defending Goodman. Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions Garvin Gaskins, Attorney Neil Brathwaite, and Darrell Taylor are prosecuting the case.
Well, still ahead tonight, the Independence flag makes a trip south.
And from the House of Assembly, help on its way for Grand Bahama. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.